Hey folks, it's Jeremy Kirkland. You're listening to Blammo. How we doing? We hanging in there? It's been an insane week here. It's been an insane week everywhere, I'm sure many of you. We've been stuck in all this snow. I mean, we just got pummeled with snow. 4 days, the kids had snow days. I love them, but man, get to school. Meanwhile, LA has just been experiencing catastrophic wildfires. I mean, it's gut-wrenching to see the pictures and the news, and a few friends of mine lost everything. And I mean everything. Like one friend, he was out of town, and he was getting calls from his neighbors, and they were like, hey, are you home? Because we're evacuating. And he lost it all. I mean, it's... Look, I try to keep the vibes positive here, and I will, but I think it's also okay to grieve. You know, check in on your friends if you got friends in LA, or, I mean, shoot, if you got friends anywhere. Call them, listen, offer support, prayers. There are tons of GoFundMe's out there. I know I've been trying to donate to the ones that I can. And also, look, here's the thing. If you can't contribute financially, just check in with people. Time is also a great gift to give. But one thing that's really given me hope throughout all this, and joy especially, are the people who keep showing up. And like the firefighters, obviously, which huge thanks to them, the neighbors, businesses offering food and shelter and essentials. I think it's beautiful. I mean, you think it's hell out there? Nope. I mean, dude, love is going to win. It's pretty beautiful. So we're going to get through this. And I know, look, I didn't lose my house, but you know, these are some good friends of mine that lost a lot, and you know, you want to do what you can to let them know they're not alone. So good stuff. We got a good show this week. Arianne Phillips is back on the pod. I talked with her a couple years ago, and I'll put a link to her first appearance in the show notes. But she is an incredible costume designer, Academy Award nominated costume designer. And she's back to talk the recent Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown. It's a James Mangold film starring, you know him, Mr. Timothée Chalamet, about the early rise of Bob Dylan. If you haven't seen the movie, you definitely should. It is a fantastic film. But she's back, and man, I just love chatting with her. Arianne and I chat turning Timothée Chalamet into Bob Dylan, dress codes in the 60s, how dressing a character can influence your own style, the recent Levi's collab, and more. So dig in. So how are you holding up? You've been doing a lot of Dylan talk. So we'll give you a break from that, but we'll definitely jump into Dylan stuff a bit here. But how are you holding up?
Oh, great. You know, I mean, Bob Dylan and this movie are near and dear to me, and it's been a long time coming. You know, I was first asked to design this movie in 2019 by Jim Mangold, the director.
Yeah.
And it is a reunion for us of sorts. This is my sixth film with him, but it had been almost 10 years, or maybe 10 years. I actually don't know exactly, since we had worked together due to scheduling and different things. So it's something that, you know, when he asked me in 2019 if I would join him in designing this movie about Bob Dylan that's centered around the event at Newport in 65. Mm-hmm. I didn't know a lot about the event. I knew just kind of some of the mythology. Well, and I can say here I am 5 years later, I can't say I know that much more, but I've certainly read all different accounts of what happened. And that's kind of, so when he called me in 2019, he said, check out the Elijah Wald book that he wrote. I think it's called Going Electric. Mm-hmm. And Jim was working on a script by Jay Cox that he had gotten and was doing his polish on it. And then he sent me the script, and it was thrilling. I mean, we worked together on Walk the Line now almost 20 years ago. And, you know, that, you know, mostly it's from birth to death in a way, not totally to death. It's like from birth until the 70s.
With Johnny Cash.
Yeah, about Johnny Cash. And, you know, I've done a couple of biopics, The People vs. Larry Flint, a movie, W.E., about the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, which was from, you know, their whole life. Usually it's a trajectory of a large part of someone's life, if not from birth to death. So this was very focused on 61 to 65, the kind of origin story, if you will, of the artist that we know as Bob Dylan, the icon. And, it occurred to me that while this is such a prolific time for his music, like he wrote so many songs in this 4-year period, and some of music that lives on that, as we know, has famously been covered by many artists.
Yeah.
It's so rich. It's such an interesting story about kind of the origin of this mysterious minstrel's kind of mythology around him, because he's so kind of unknown for, and our film was called A Complete Unknown. So the first thing that was very apparent to me that was super exciting is that because it's only 4 years,
Yeah.
really traditionally in a biopic, I really lean in and work with the production designer. There's so many things that you see help guide the audience through kind of a story, from like the architecture can change, the automobiles can change, the technology, phones, TVs, this kind of thing. And in these 4 years, really, nothing in that world changes. The architecture stays the same. Technology doesn't really change. But what we see is this 19-year-old kid between 19 and 24. We really see him come into his own and kind of set off on a path that we know today as this kind of iconoclast, this, very unique artist, very prolific, who has really, from my estimation, has really avoided being confined to one thing or one musical style. And that is so interesting to me about Bob Dylan, how diverse his music is, his tastes, and, just learning about that. So that I really felt like I could help visually tell that story, not only, especially, of course, for the audience, as costumes do, set a time and a place and show the evolution of this, if you will, character arc from a 19-year-old to a 24-year-old. And along with the hair designer, Jamie Lee McIntosh, who I brought onto this movie I worked with before, I think we had I knew reading the script, we had the opportunity to really help guide the audience through this kind of early evolution of him finding his, not necessarily finding, but on the journey to becoming his true artistic self, from kind of this kid showing up in New York in search of Woody Guthrie. So that was really exciting to help be able to guide the story visually. And then, of course, because I believe costumes work in a physical way for the actors, to be able to work closely with Timothée Chalamet on and on that character arc too, visual, for him, and creating, I believe costumes really create a physical experience for the actor. And early on, I read a quote from Laurence Olivier that's kind of informed me, over 30 years ago or 40 years ago, I read this quote when I was in my 20s of, he always started with the character for the shoes up. So that's usually my entry point. And with Bob, it's very clear when I was looking for threads, his aesthetic and what he gravitated towards in terms of how he dressed himself, it was boots, because he's consistently worn boots, and his denim story, which is, I think that I believe the precursor and really reflected what was happening at the time, that this kind of post-beatnik, early folk scene that would, as we know at the end of the 60s, be the summer of love. When you think of the summer of love, you think of Woodstock, you think of people barefoot in jeans.
Yeah.
But in 61, well, most of the 60s, there was serious dress codes, right? Like you couldn't wear denim to school, you couldn't wear them, you had the blue collar job, to work, to church. Denim was really relegated in those days to workwear in terms of like a construction worker or, more working class physical job, a painter, or it was recreational, what you wore on the weekends, what you changed into you came home from school, or what you wore riding a horse or fishing. And denim is really, to me, like representative of youth revolt and counterculture. I think about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that I designed, which was set in 1969. And I specifically dressed all the Manson girls in denim because it was very counterculture. And I believe that with Bob kind of not cowtailing to anyone but his own thing musically, his own trajectory, that denim story was really actually poignant because when we meet him in 1961, and I had a little bit of visual research, he's dressing in the style of Woody Guthrie. And in our movie, he's showing up in New York City, straight, from Minnesota looking for Woody Guthrie. And I was thinking about being a 19-year-old myself. And I don't know about you, but
that's when I moved to New York. I think you were in New York when you were 19, right?
Yeah, I moved to New York when I was 20. I was 20. But at that time, like, we've just left home. Our relationship to the world and how we present and dress ourselves we're figuring it out. We're figuring out our own style. There's nothing more personal than denim in terms of like expressing your style, I think. And I know when I was a kid and I was 19, 20, I had, oh gosh, like Bananarama on my mirror and wanted to dress like them. And I don't know, did you read Free Will in Time, Suze Rotell's book?
I did. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty incredible to, unpacking like a lot of these scenes. I think she was a little bit more of a less reporter, but it felt like more like scene building than some of the other stuff. But like I went on a tangent of Dylan books, especially. It's funny, during the pandemic, I felt like I had this weird.
Me too. During the pandemic.
Yeah, it was this weird moment where I was like, I need to find things that are like that feel safe and also feel easier, that like there's a wealth of resources about. And because I am curious, that you're kind of the person to call to work on the just like the tent pole style films. I mean, if you look at all the stuff that you've done in the past, I mean, you've created so many characters that people emulate and often chase after far after the movie's been out. I mean, the amount of people that are still trying to find that Hawaiian shirt from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is still going out there. But I'm curious, like with the Dylan stuff, is it more helpful or more of a hindrance when you're working with a person that people already know who they are before the movie? Like when you're helping design a character where a lot of people have an understanding of who this person is, like similar to Johnny Cash in the sense that like they know who they look like. Or do you feel like they're like, well, I have a head start? Or is it like, no, now I got to match the person who's going to, try to make this, see if it looks like freewheeling?
Well, what I can say is that helping the audience suspend belief and be immersed in the story is essential. And that is also helping the physical transformation of our actors, not just Timothée Chalamet, but Monica Barbaros, Joan Baez, or even Norbert as Alan Lomax, and our Johnny Cash, getting to revisit Johnny Cash with Boyd Holbrook. All our characters are known characters, except for the Suze Rotello character, who is actually, her name is Sylvie in our film, which was a request from Bob himself to Jim Mangold. She's the only person that isn't known. I mean, she's known to Bob fans because she's on the cover of the Freewheeling album.
Yeah.
But Bob, that was one of Bob's notes that Jim shared with us early on, that he requested that change her name because she never, and that's kind of part of our storyline. She never sought fame. She wasn't interested in being famous. And I took that to be a very touching, kind of tender note. She's passed away, but just to respect her, Bob, I think, said something like she didn't ask for fame and she wasn't after it. So, what I've gathered over these few years is that, she's probably like his first love, and there's some tenderness there, which is very sweet, and you'll see it represented in the film. But yes, I mean, my responsibility is always like when we're recreating known events. And in this movie, we have a few known events, is to do the research and to recreate it visually as close as possible. Luckily, in our movie, the early time period, it's before Dylan was really press shy, and he was doing a lot of press, a lot of press calls and newsreels and photos. And yes, so my job is to help create that illusion and help the actor and help the audience to get immersed in the story, essentially. So yes, it is important. And also, when looking at my actor, like Timothée Chalamet is a different physicality than Bob Dylan. So discovering kind of where that sweet spot is in terms of, fortunately, if you think about the way Bob wore his jackets, like around the Freewheelin' album, he wore them very short.
Yeah.
Timmy's very long, and he's very tall. He's just under 6 feet tall. So just figuring out proportionately, of course, in the film, and balancing that out is part of the process of bringing it to life. But we're not making a documentary. We're making a cinematic narrative based on real events. And Bob pretty much gave his permission to Jim in not so many words, saying, my life is a fable. It's he that in that kind of elusive flat Bob way, which was a way of giving us permission as filmmakers to create an interesting film. I had a very similar experience when I never met Bob, but him and Jim had their meetings actually during COVID. I would imagine, Bob was off the road and probably was like, okay, what's this movie?
Can you imagine Bob on a Zoom? I mean, oh man.
Oh no, they met in person. They met in person.
There you go.
They met in person. I guess at a distance or something. I don't know at what point during COVID, but actually going back to the reason why, so I got the script in 2019. We were meant to shoot it in summer of 2020, and then COVID hit. And we were delayed. And then when we came out, everyone was coming out of COVID. It was a scheduling kerfuffle because
you were also on the
Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah, Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah, but I was holding space for this movie. But Timmy was prepping Dune, getting ready to do Dune, and Jim was getting ready to do Indiana Jones. So after many, many delays, we actually went into pre-production in late May 2023. And that really was 4 years. So I got that time to gestate, if you will, my research. And, I kept, and I still have them at folders on my computer where I was just aggregating not only photos of Bob, but photos of all of our characters, and massive thousands of photos, really, and watching and reading, and also listening to audiobooks when I was driving. During COVID, I listened to a lot of audiobooks because I was driving up and down the coast because my family lives in Santa Cruz. So we'd go up there and socially distance. So I listened to a lot and read a lot ad nauseum, like to the point of like, I don't think I can listen to another or read another Dylan biography. But suffice to say that, so we got started in 2023. I started with fittings with Timmy and Monica and Elle, who's playing Sylvie and Joan in LA when Monica and Timmy were doing pre-records for the music. And that was great. Knowing we were going to shoot in New Jersey, being able to be there, kind of, it felt like a workshop, like summer camp, a Bob Dylan summer camp, where they were going off and recording, and then I'd see them before or after, and then we'd have hair sessions and all kinds of things. And then that afforded me about a month of prep. It was a very short prep in the end. It was very ambitious schedule. And like most films these days, they always feel underfunded. We're under the gun. And then we got to New Jersey to shoot the film, and we got shut down from the actors' strike.
Oh my God, that's right.
Yeah, so we got shut down in July, and then we had a six months till we were up and running again. We didn't get up and running again until the end of January, but there are times where we didn't even know if we were going to come back.
Oh.
But that afforded me actually what I was able to do in that 6 months unofficially, because I wasn't working.
Correct.
I was able to really forensically study the fittings we had done and figure out what we were remaking from the fittings, what we were going to make, what we were going to hunt and gather. And so all that time, and I was still listening and reading these biographies, not just about Bob, but about Joan and Pete Seeger. And
yeah,
that really afforded me a deeper level of research than I'd ever had on the movie. So it was, really a passion project. And I can say like my whole costume crew was really invested as well. And everyone made sure and came back after the film, which was really incredible. But
yeah. Wait, hold on a second. Okay, before you send that DM or text that friend, I know what you're thinking. You're ready to buy your first serious watch, or in other cases, maybe your fourth or your fifth. But look, man, it's hard out there. It really is. From this dealer or that store that wants the purchase history or whatever. I mean, you're just, I don't know, you're almost ready to walk away from the whole game. But fear not, my friends. Check out Bezel. Bezel is the trusted marketplace for buying and selling your next luxury watch, with expert in-house authentication on every purchase. With over 18,000 watches listed right now, as of the time I'm recording this, from a mix of professional dealers to private sellers, you're just going to find what you're looking for. But wait, I know. You're like, Jeremy, I'm sorry. They don't have that X Rolex or that insane Omega. Well, reach out to them. Bezel has a real team of real people. Just create an account and be connected with a private client advisor, and they will guide you through the entire process every step. Once you decide on your watch, it's overnighted to Bezel HQ, where their in-house team of experts authenticate it, and then it's on your way to you. If anything is amiss, the watch is not listed correctly, whatever it is, they'll let you know, the buyer know, and the offer to refund you or source you a new one at a similar price. That's pretty good, right? This has been part of the Bezel ethos since launch. I've even spoke to the founders about it. And now you can make an offer on a watch, buy it outright, or bid it at auction. Bezel is the highest rated watch marketplace out there. Even Trustpilot shows Bezel is 4.9 out of 5 stars with rave reviews. Okay, you're still on the fence? Dig into the Blamo feed yourself and listen to my chat with the Bezel co-founders and, well, see for yourself. But you got this. I believe in you. Visit getbezel.com and buy and sell your next luxury watch. That's getbezel.com. Getbezel.com.
What I wanted to share with you, and I don't know if you remember this, of course, I was looking for this, is Suze Rotell's book was probably one of the most helpful accounts of how Bob dressed himself. Because our film, we broke down his character arc into 3 beats, from 61, 62, showing up in New York, looking for what he got 3 in our story, and then 63, 64, encapsulated on the cover of the Freewheelin' album, where you see his silhouette. When you first meet him, his style is very kind of American proletariat, Woody Guthrie style, Dust Bowl worker aesthetic that went along with all those stories that he grew up in a circus or he jumped trains. This kind of mythology he was creating about himself. And then 63, 64 was he was starting to play around in the West Village in the folk scene. He meets Sylvie, and you see it on the cover of Freewheelin'. His silhouette is slimmer. He's wearing jeans. I was pretty sure, but I had to call my friends at Levi's that they were 501s. And then we have 65, and that is the most notable. I mean, his hair changes through that time. His denim changes and his boots change. There's a consistency in his aesthetic. But what I learned reading Suze Rotell's book is that she claims that, and we went with it, that Bob spent hours in front of the mirror kind of perfecting that early kind of Woody Guthrie look.
Yeah.
That, which I saw a few of these very early photos, and he looks like just like a messy 19-year-old kid, with his, Pendleton shirt and his plaid shirt and his work boots and his kind of carpenter jeans. But according to Suze, he spent a lot of time kind of curating this look in the mirror, and that he was very conscious about how he was presentationally. And, I love it. It just makes him more human. The man, the myth, the legend, more human. And it makes sense for a 19, 20-year-old kid who's meeting with record executives and recording for the first time. And, in the beginning, he was just doing folk covers and, really kind of finding his people in New York and figuring out himself, his own music and also his own expression through the way he dressed himself, how he wanted the world to see him. And we see that change, with Freewheeling. We see him, he's starting to wear those suede jackets. And indeed, those are 501s. He's wearing cowboy boots around that time. And sometimes I saw a picture, didn't do it in the movie, with him with a bolo tie, with 50s cowboy shirt and, cowboy boots and rough out boots. And then boom, we hit 1965 and he's like, his silhouette's slim. He's wearing very slim trousers.
He looks very Eddie Slimane.
The Chelsea boots, right? Yeah. and the hair is longer. And I realized that I didn't read it specifically. I saw a couple pictures and I realized that he had gone to London. He was a fan of the Beatles. He was a fan of the Kinks, the Animals, of course. So that clearly, and he was hanging out with them and Donovan. And clearly, I made a story up for myself about this, but clearly he adopted some of that style. He started to have those tab shirts made. He's got the Beatle, the Chelsea boots.
Yeah.
And that's when London style, Carnaby Street, and the mod look was really coming into play. So he was definitely came back with this mod point of view, right? And influence. And the story I made up for myself is that Albert Grossman, it looks like Albert Grossman probably had his suits made on Savile Row.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a couple pictures of Bob being measured, which looks like a British tailor shop. And, he's wearing the military epaulette pea coats. And, he's really adopted that British look. And I think we give so much credit to Mick Jagger and the Beatles for creating that rock and roll archetype, that kind of British invasion. But then you think about Bob and you realize he is the original, post Buddy Holly, post Little Richard. He's the original archetype for American rock and roll. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And that because he's constantly evolving as an artist to this day, I don't know if he's gotten, well, I know he has, the vests and there is a specific Bob Dylan style. So I think he has, in menswear journals and stuff has been notably, but he really, as we know, in our movie ends at 65, but beyond that, in 66 and 67, I mean, his style just explodes. He's wearing those polka dot suits and, stripes. So that was really wonderful to tell that kind of evolution and his influence from his travels, way pre-internet. And of how his style kind of was underscoring and mimicking his evolution as an artist, from solo folk singer alone with a guitar to his desire to be in a band.
Yeah.
And continue evolving his music beyond this kind of corner he had been put in as a folk singer. And then you see this expression of that through how he's dressed. So it was he Timothée Chalamet had 67 costume changes in our movie.
67?
Yeah, which is about average for a biopic. So Larry Flint, I believe Woody Harrelson had 60, and Joaquin Phoenix, I look back, he had 65 costume changes in Walk the Line. So, because the costumes, we have a lot of scenes that help show the story over time.
Right.
So it is costumes help show that movement through time. So I tried to reweave pieces so that it wasn't like it. And I did reweave pieces. So it didn't look like he was having a new outfit every time we saw him.
Yeah.
But it was really, I mean, we had 120 speaking parts, which is massive.
Yeah. How many looks did you make for the whole film? I mean, if you knew off the top of your head. I mean, because I think people don't always understand this, and I'm saying this, for listeners. You weren't just responsible for dressing one person. You are the costume designer for the film.
Yes,
so there's a lot of things that are happening that I think listeners may not totally understand yet.
I didn't total it up, but I can give you an idea. I mean, so Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan had like 67 costume changes. We had 120 speaking parts. And I would say of the first 20 people, and those were like Pete Seeger, Joan Baez, Sylvie, Johnny Cash, characters like Bobby Newirth, Mike Bloomfield. We see them multiple times in our story. Some of them had as many as 25 changes.
Holy moly.
And no less than 10. So you have those.
You're like 200-ish at least.
So, well, you have the supporting, but then we had 5,000 extras that we fit. So we had 5,000 extras that we fit. And some of those people had more than one costume change because we had a tendency to use people. We have two Newport scenes. We have a day Newport performance and the night Newport. So every single person we dressed for Newport had 2 costume changes. So, you could say like of 5,000 people we dressed, we probably had 7,500 costumes.
Okay.
Head to toe.
How much of this was vintage versus being made, out of curiosity?
Right. Well, for Timmy's costumes, I would say 2/3 to 3/4 we made.
Okay.
And the other bits were like vintage pieces that we found. And we made like all of Albert Grossman's costumes. He had like 20 costumes. We made a lot, all of Johnny Cash's costumes, and then certain characters. We also had a lot of background characters at Newport who never had lines, but like we had like an Odetta. We had Peter Yarrow as a character in our movie, but we had Paul and Mary, so that we had and we had background lookalikes. With Mother Mabel Cash, we had Lightning Hopkins. So these are people who didn't even have lines, but were standing off stage that we know were there, and they had costume changes too. So it was a lot, and I had a very big crew. I had a background crew of a crew of customers that were just fitting background the whole way through the movie, and we started to be able to hit our mark of all those. With so many concert scenes. I think we have like 30 songs in our movie. We have like Town Hall, Carnegie Hall, Newport 64, Newport 65, Monterey Folk Festival, like lots and lots of concert scenes, plus like Gertie's and Folk City and all the small cafe scenes from the beginning of the movie. And I had a background crew that was just dressing background, and there was about 15 of them, and they started doing fittings a month before shooting, and they were fitting background like 20 to 30 people a day all the way to the end of our last week of shooting. So it was, and we had massive amounts for the background. For most background, we dressed them in vintage.
Mm-hmm.
The good people at Levi's gave us product to use that was recreations of like 501s at the time, jeans, but we had to age all those. We had a big textile team of people that were just aging and distressing clothes.
Oh my God.
So didn't look new.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot, a lot. But that's how we tell the story. This it's crucial to the storytelling of this world, this New York City and beyond, and all these concert scenes.
Did you go to the I've been itching to go, but it's not really on the way. There's like a Bob Dylan museum now.
Tulsa.
In Tulsa.
Yeah. I didn't go. It was a disappointment for me. I wish I could have. I was planning to go.
Yeah.
Then then it just didn't work out with the scheduling and stuff. But our on the first round before we got shut down on the strike, our prop person went.
Oh.
Who didn't end up continuing with us after the strike, but she went and was able to share a lot of photos and accounts of what was at the museum. What we did have access to, which was amazing, was the Columbia archive of photos that we got from Columbia, photos that had never been seen. And that was really helpful for research, like, the recording sessions and all kind, and we have a lot of recording sessions in our movie from Columbia, not just from 65, which we have a lot of the recording sessions then, but early his first recording sessions for his first and second record, we have scenes, and which was really great, and all the characters who were at the recording sessions, including Tom, the engineer, and it's just who's legendary in his own right.
Do you ever accidentally, and so I say this as a person who, whenever I get into work, I get very, very, very into it. But have you ever like accidentally incepted yourself with the clothing where you find yourself, you're working on a film and you're working on a character and you get so into those characters that next thing you know, it alters your own personal style?
Oh, of course. Every movie I end up dressing like the vibe of the movie. Oh, for sure. Here I am. I'm wearing
I did notice, yeah.
T-shirt, which is very much like that famous photo session he did with Suze Rotolo, which we created. This is actually from Levi's, but we recreated our own striped T-shirt for him to wear in the movie. We recreated the Freewheeling album cover, and then created some like photo shoots around that time that kind of harkens to those photos.
Yeah, and I was curious because like on Finding Vintage, and a bunch of friends of mine who are vintage dealers, they talk about the era of the early 60s as one of the more difficult eras to source stuff from, because it was like one of the first things when people started paying attention to vintage to get picked. So do you find a specific era any more or less difficult to source from?
Yeah, well, I have designed quite a few mid-century films.
Yeah.
From Girl Interrupted to Single Man to Walk the Line. And I would say, Girl Interrupted, I designed in 1999. It was a lot easier to find those clothes. Now, these clothes are 60 years old. And plus, everyone doesn't wear exactly what was happening in 1961, because you also have people that are wearing that you backdate. Like, people don't buy all their clothes fresh that year. So I'm looking
right.
late.
Shit, I just realized that.
Late 50s clothes, but also showing the younger people, of course, in more clothes that were relevant that day. But yes, we had to amass a huge stock for not only our background, but and we had a tailor shop, a full tailor shop that we set up in our space, and we did source vintage fabric and have to remake, or not remake. We sourced vintage fabric, and we made some stuff for our stock. Where we could. But yes, we hunted and gathered, and we couldn't afford to buy all those clothes. We had to rent a lot of them. So they do exist in the rental houses, and we use rental houses across the country, specifically for the film business or theater. So that was really helpful. And then, of course, I have collectors, and I've went down many rabbit holes on Etsy, and when I couldn't get out of the office, and in the early days prepping a film, you have time to like go to flea markets and stuff like that, but once the fittings start, I have to rely on stuff being sent. And also geographically, I wanted a lot of the clothes to come from the East Coast to have, because we're telling an East Coast, New York, Newport story. Of course, we do have a little part of our film that when Bob goes to the Monterey Folk Festival and goes to Joan Baez's house. So showing that difference between the East and West style of what was happening and what was going to be happening, what this kind of youth movement, which direction it was going in. and showing the geographical distance, which would be reflected in the style. So no stone was left unturned, and we had to hold on to all that stock of costumes through the strike. At one point, we weren't sure if we had to return everything, which was about 180 racks of costumes.
Oh, Lord.
And luckily, the film company agreed for us to hold on to them, and they have to pay for that. So we held on to everything, which was really good, because had we just would have never, time-wise, because it took a good month to get month to 6 weeks to get most of the stock, just in terms of pulling it, and every single piece is chosen. We don't just we either someone's on the ground pulling it from the costume house, or we're looking at photos. And we bought a lot from collectors and various places. So yeah, just no stones left unturned when you're trying to amass that kind of wardrobe.
Yeah, like whenever you were sourcing some of this stuff, how much were you letting some of these collectors know what the stuff was going to be used for? Because I only say this in the sense that for people like you, who are just I'll say it, you're one of the greatest costume designers ever. Like,
oh my God,
no, I'm serious. I'll save it for the intro, but I mean, just the laundry list of the films that you have, that are like now classics because of the clothing. And that's not to belittle how good the movies are, but what, the characters that you've created and the people that you've worked with and influenced. I mean, it means a lot. But when you get to source some of these things, like I have a lot of vintage dealer friends who their business becomes set because they were the person that provided X for Y film. So how much of that do you ever let on when you're sourcing?
Oh, massively. We create huge digital documents with what we're looking for and the color palette, send pictures of what we're looking for. We're certainly not telling them about the scene. Or
sure, yeah.
Sometimes we are like, we're doing a summer Newport scene. We need, it's no secret. I'm not sending them the script or anything. And then I give them I do these collages, these mood boards for each setup, because we had different seasons in our film as well. We also have people on New York streets. They're not all young kids who would be at the Newport Festival. And even at the Newport Festival, you have looking at the research. And there's a great documentary film a man named Murray Lerner made that we watched. You have blues fans, and you have older folk, bluegrass people. And then you have young people who are there for Bob Dylan. So even Newport, there's a microcosm of people. You have country artists. So, those old bluegrass guys, the young folkies, the blues musicians, the more, kind of preppy Rhode Island, Newport types, collegiate kids, a lot of kids frat boys. I saw in the research, East Coast frat boys, and then the more bohemian types who came from New York City. So just at Newport alone is a microcosm of characters. So oftentimes when they're doing fittings, we would break it down of 5, Greenwich Village bohemians, 10, well, not 5, but 100 and this and that. And so people were dressed to type, so that we had a diversity in our crowd. So there's a lot of, not only are we giving that direction to our vintage dealers and the customers are using it when they're pulling our stock, but we're also doing it in the fitting room so that we're telling a diverse story in terms of who are the people in any given scene. And so that is its own puzzle in itself. Oftentimes, we were all in the same space. So the fittings with the background would be going on one side of the building while I was fitting the principals during prep on the other side. And then we'd meet at the end of the day and I'd go through their photos.
Wow.
And, oftentimes they would give me, I always say as a costume designer that you need to dress to someone's face. So that is usually what informs you, and the casting directors, when they're signing up background players, they're looking for types, older, older people on the New York street, or
Right.
so we tweak the details of tweaking even the faces, always looking for great faces. Like sometimes you'll get direction to dress someone who has a very elegant face and they're supposed to be more working class, and it doesn't really work. It's really interesting when you look at people's faces, that kind of tells you who they are in a way.
Yeah.
At a quick glance.
This guy's
So
got good skin. He's not a minor. Let's move on.
yeah, and we're always looking for those character faces anyway,
Yeah.
or like an old guy with like, a Jimmy Durante nose or whatever. Like he'd be, it's just all kinds. I mean, you are looking at people as archetypes in a way,
Yeah.
you kind of have to reduce it to that. And I'm always just looking for an interesting face. I think it can get quite generic in LA with background casting. A lot, just like a lot of super good looking people, and who all are aspiring to be, Margot Robbie or Brad Pitt. And so I love going outside, and like when we were shooting Walk the Line, we had in Memphis, Tennessee, we had the best faces, not professional background, not people who've done their teeth and they're, augmentated their body or whatever. So modern bodies and modern faces, like with the perfect teeth and everything, that can be challenging for us. Like when we're telling a story about real people, and an earlier story. And our actors went to really great lengths to kind of figure out what their physicality would be. Like Edward Norton as Pete Seeger, he cut his hairline back. He took his veneers off because Pete had these really crazy teeth. Monica Barbaro has like a beautiful, perfect smile as Joan Baez. And Joan Baez had these really lovely crooked teeth that are very charming, beautiful. Yeah. So Monica wore a prosthetic in her teeth, stuff like that. So it's all the way down from the actors, the principal actors down. We're always looking to emulate real people and give it reality.
Last question, because I know we got to be conscious of time. As you've done such a variety of individuals, and you in a lot of ways you go through the same type of path of what many fashion designers do. Like, do you ever get the itch to be like, you know what, I'm just going to do my own line? This way I'm going to own my IP. I'm going to figure this out. Like, I'm just curious if that ever kind of sits in the back of your head.
It's a conversation that I've had many times with different people. And what I can say, like what we did with Kingsman, where we did a costume to collection, that was really exciting because that was based on the movie. And we've done it again with this movie. Levi's, who I reached out to, who pretty much at this point is like the only authentically heritage brand that exists. Levi's has an amazing archive and vintage department. So I reached out to them initially. They have this guy, Paul O'Neill, he creates the vintage collections, to help me vet Dylan's jeans. And he had done this capsule collection I'm not sure if it was Japan or Europe or both, but in 2019, that was based on the folk scene in Bob Dylan in 2019. So he sent me that lookbook and I was blown away. And he was the one who pointed out to me, that's what made me read. And this is late 2022, mid or early 2023. I can't remember exactly when, but he's the one who said, oh, definitely read A Freewheelin' Time, Susie Rotell's book, because she talks about how she made a patch for the inside of his jeans to fit nicely over his boots. Once he showed that to me and pointed out, I couldn't unsee it. And I dare you to go look at those photos from 62, 63, and I couldn't unsee it. So we did that, and they remade for me the super slim Levi's that he wears in 65, which were only made by Levi's for a couple years. And so they're impossible to find with collectors. I reach out to like I think, some of the best collectors like Bob Millett. And, usually the few that we found were nowhere near Timmy's size. So Paul O'Neill from Levi's offered to remake them for us, and because they have vintage ones in their archive. So they remade them for us. We fit them on Timmy before we shut down for the strike. They weren't perfect. So the great thing about the strike is Levi's remade them again, and we're able to perfect them. So he wears Levi. So we created a mini capsule, very mini capsule. You can see on my Instagram, I posted, we're launching, goes on sale on Levi's.com this week.
Oh my God, amazing. I'll be sure to link it and share it. Yeah.
Yeah, on the 20th. You'll see it on my Instagram. And it's just 3 pieces, but they're really great. We made a suede moto 2-pocket jacket that you will see is inspired by the jacket I created for the film, which was inspired by research of him wearing this. He had quite a few suede jackets. The freewheeling jacket, he had a chocolate brown one with bone buttons, and then this 2-pocket moto jacket. As we know, he's a big motorcycle rider. So we did that jacket. It's gorgeous. It's limited edition. They've only made a limited amount of pieces. And then those jeans that Suze Rotello put the patch in, we recreated those with the patch, like the earliest bootcut jean ever. It's like a precursor 10-year or 8 years before the flare.
Wow.
And his belt, if you notice, in the 60s, he continually wore what I call the D belt. So the jeans and the belt come together. It's in a beautiful box. Paul O'Neill outdid himself with the packaging, with like lyrics from songs and a photo still from the movie. And we printed on the inside of the jacket and also in the jeans the scene it was in the movie. So it's very
yeah.
And so that was really, really thrilling. And I was just in New York. We just did a launch event, and you see it on my Instagram.
Yeah.
It's really great. So I am not interested in designing in general, but I love it when it's rooted in the development from a character or a film, where it's rooted in that storytelling. And then, because people always ask me, and actually men more than women, like, where can I get that jacket? Like the Ben Foster jacket in 310 Yuma, or that Hawaiian shirt. And that's been going on my whole career. So being able to create authentic pieces that are part of the film is thrilling. And Levi's is like the most incredible partner. And also I'm really proud because part of Bob's story is this denim story, which really is the precursor to kind of culture as we know it, like this youth culture movement through denim. And it's just fantastic to be able to create a product with a company that has so much integrity and, a healthy archive and heritage that is honored. I mean, they're constantly innovating their new products, but they also reissue a lot of these vintage styles over the years and go to really extreme circumstances to recreate that denim and the denim quality. So I'm super grateful and thrilled for the collaboration.
Nice. Well, that's great. Well, we're about to go in a minute, but is there any other stuff you want to add or mention before we wrap? Are you working on anything right now?
No, I am right now. It's the holidays, or the holidays are coming. I'm just working on with Levi's in this launch, and I just finished a short little indie film with the amazing Greg Araki, who is known for his films in the 90s that really are day run and gun indie film, which was really fun. Things
Nice.
go on.
Nice. Well, thank you.
So good to see you.
Yes.
Thank you for this, Jeremy.
It's always a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thanks. I'm happy to talk to the Blamo audience. Thanks, Jeremy. It's great talking to you again.
We'll see you. Bye.
You've been listening to Blamo. Our show is produced by Blamo Media. We're edited by Amar Lowell, and our theme music, as always, by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. If you like what you heard, you know the drill. Share the pod with a friend. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars or thumbs up on whatever other thing you're listening to us on, whether it's Dingledorp or Bing Bong, whatever it's called. But you can also follow us on Instagram for all the hot content. If you want to talk to us and give us your hot take, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@blamopod.com. Last but not least, super ultra important. If I had a air horn, I would press it right now. You got to come and join us over on Patreon, because the fun never stops over there. Look, the live show, the free show, whatever you want to call this, we take breaks here and there, but Patreon, it never stops. And we also got exclusive shows like Die Workwear, hosted by Derek Guy and Peter Zotolo, and the Triple J Show, hosted by yours truly with John Moy and Gene DeLeon. There's just a ton of stuff over there. So check it out at patreon.com/Blamo. If not, no worries. We got hundreds and hundreds of free episodes in the feed, and more to come. So we will see you all soon.